I've been training for powerlifting now for the past 8 years. In that time, I've gained a ton of strength, and I've also had the privilege of helping a couple hundred athletes also gain strength and PR their lifts. And here's the one thing that I noticed with younger athletes, and even with myself when I was younger as well, and it's that they always have phantom bad days. And this could even apply to intermediate lifters and maybe some people who've been training for, like longer than 5 years. But these phantom bad days always happen. These are days where you come in expecting to be able to do X, maybe you're expecting to be able to squat 500 pounds and only 450 is there. Or you're expecting to be able to move this particular weight at an RPE of 6 and you're only able to move it at an RPE of 8 or something like that. So these phantom bad days always happen to lifters, as I said, across the spectrum, anywhere from beginner to advanced, but more so beginner and intermediate lifters have this happen. And the negative or the downside to this is twofold. One, it could be physically, where you simply accumulate more fatigue than you would want, and it messes up your training that is to come. Or two, it could be mentally, where you start to question yourself because you go into the gym with this level of confidence and this level of assurance that, hey, I'm gonna be able to do this, and then just simply not being able to do it, and then also questioning your training going forward because it's if this was supposed to be RP 6 and it ended up being RP 8, then how do I progress on from here throughout the rest of my block or towards my meet, right? And after looking at it, I sort of realized that I never have bad days of training. I never have days of training where I come in expecting something and it's just not simply there. You guys would see if you're following the build series or following any of my training in general that I don't really fail lifts. And if you look at a lot of other elite level athletes, guys like Austin Perkins, Jesus Oliveras, Russell Ohi, Bob Matthews, these guys rarely fail lifts, and when they do, it's sort of I expected that, and it was really more so like an ego play, and they kind of got in their own way, right? And I think through really looking at it and diving into it, I've been able to pinpoint the one thing that allows athletes to go from having these phantom bad days to not having bad days at all, really, or ever. Right? And before I hop into that and share that exact thing with you guys, I want to make two quick caveats or disclaimers, right? The first one is that I'm going to assume that your nutrition, sleep, and just recovery in general is at least decent. You don't necessarily need to be like an Olympic athlete who's 6 months out from competition, but at the same time, you can't be, getting in 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight today, and then tomorrow you're getting, a total of 30 grams of protein or something like that, and 150 fat. You need to be somewhat balanced in that, so that way, your training is predictable, and that way, that variable is sort of under control. So it's not a situation where you're getting 3 hours of sleep one night and then 9 hours of sleep the next night. Even if you're not getting in a perfect 8 hours or 7 hours, you're at least consistently getting 6.5 or something like that. You want to be consistent with that, and what I'm about to share with you is assuming that you at least half prioritize your training and you half prioritize those variables, right? And the next thing that I'm going to say is that what we're talking about here is unexpected or phantom bad days. So not necessarily days where you come in and you kind of know you're gonna have a bad day. Let's say, for example, you usually baseline getting in 7 hours of sleep, and then you had an exam that you had to study for, or you had an emergency pop up in the middle of the night, and you weren't able to get that sleep, or let's say you did a hike or you traveled or something like that. Those bad days are expected, and those bad days usually don't have the same sort of mental and physical ramifications that unexpected bad day would have, just simply because mentally, if you know that you're coming in and you expect the day to be bad, and it is bad, it's okay, brush that to the side and you bounce back next session or next week, right? And then physically as well, usually, if it is, let's say something moves bad, but it's due to like a drastic external circumstance that is not usually there, then you're actually usually able to progress on as you normally would the following week and still be fine, right? So that's the two quick caveats there. We're just talking about phantom bad days and also assuming that, you're not absolutely like wrecking your own recovery and stuff like that, right? Now, also, I want to do a quick recap on a few things that I spoke about in my last sit down and talk style videos, right? I spoke about AGWA, which is AGWA. I spoke about momentum, which is the simply the feeling of predictable progress in training. So simply where you know that your training is going to go well, you know that last week was good, so this week would be good, and you just have high momentum in your training that is carrying you forward, right? And the last thing is the different types of phases, which I spoke about in my last video, which is simply phases where you are rebounding, building, and then progressing phases, right? So those are the three different types of phases. And again, just a brief explanation on that. A rebounding phase is where, you're not necessarily at your peak and you sort of like just allowing your body time to, really like build up. A building phase is where you're sort of like at your peak, but you're not necessarily like surpassing that. And then a progressing phase is obviously where momentum is high, you're making explosive progress, and you're sort of like expecting that, so you're pushing new PRs, right? So that's usually what that is, right? Now, you guys already know, when I have the laptop out, we're going to be screen sharing. We're going to be hopping into some examples here so that you guys can see exactly what I'm talking about and I could relay the information as accurately as possible, right? Now, on your screen here, what you guys would see is at the bottom, we have 4 different tabs. We have lifter A, lifter B, lifter C, and lifter D, right? These are the 4 examples that I came up with to kind of like allow you guys to visualize exactly what I'm talking about, right? Now, lifter A here, you guys can see that this is block 1 of day 1. And lifter A is a lifter who either, let's say their coach for some reason shares their programming with them one day at a time, so they don't necessarily know exactly what they're going to be doing besides just that one particular day, right? And you can see that lifter A here has on day 1 they have high bar pause squat, pause deadlifts, and they know they have a 1x4 at RP of 5 and a 1x4 at RP of 5 on both of them, right? Now, I will get into the downsides and upsides of each different type of lifter, but this is just an explanation. Lifter A is the type of lifter who either their coach only shares one day with them at a time, or they themselves are only thinking one day at a time. So they coming into the gym and it's like, all right, cool, I'm gonna just crush this PR. I don't really care what day or week it is. I'm just gonna, think. Lifter B, you can see now that lifter B has day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, right? And it's a 4-day program, so there's no more beyond that. Now, this type of lifter would be someone who, again, either their coach just simply shares with them, 1 week at a time, which some coaches do. I personally am against that, and I'll get into why. But either their coach just shares with them simply 1 week at a time, or they just simply think with 1 week at a time. So they now could see, okay, on day 1 I have this, on day 2 I have this, on day 3 I have this. So they could see a couple days in advance and they could kind of understand the overall, structure of the week and what they're going to be doing and different things like that, right? Lifter C, as you would guess, has the entire block laid out in front of them. So he could see that he's going to be running a 4-week block and he could see the weekly progression here. So instead of just saying, okay, week 1 is at 5 and, the bench here is at 6 and stuff like that, he could now see that, okay, the next week I'm progressing on to at 5 on the pause squats, at 7 on the on week 3, and then at 8 on week 4. And then he could also see what the other days are and how they progress and everything like that. So he has obviously a higher level perspective than lifter B and lifter A, right? And then lifter D, similar to lifter C, has the entire block. But if we scroll down, we would see that he has block 2 and block 3 ahead of him, right? And this is a situation where, again, either your coach shares with you the entire block, which most likely, in this case, they will, and then either he shares with you the plans for the following block, or he actually shows you, okay, this is what we more than likely going to be doing, right? Now, this could also be a lifter who self-coaches themselves and they have like a planned schedule as to what they're going to hit. It doesn't need to be that, oh yes, I'm writing out 12, 16, or 20 weeks in advance. It could just simply be, okay, I have an idea of the structure that I'm pushing towards, right? Now, let me get into the actual downfalls and upsides to each different type of lifter here, right? Now, lifter A. Lifter A has a very micro view of their training, right? And a lot of times, as I said, this could be beginner lifters. Maybe they don't have a coach and they're just simply looking at, like, let's say like a program from online or something like that. And they just like, okay, I'm gonna do this on this day and I'm gonna, see how much I could do and stuff like that, right? They have no context to their training, right? And I will show you guys how each level provides additional context and how each level ties in to your ability to not have bad days and why you would want to progress from being lifter A, B, or C to lifter D, right? So lifter B could see the entire week. So he has more context as to what he's going to be doing. So lifter A knows that on day 1, okay, I'm going to be doing this 1x4 to RPE of 5. And then lifter B knows that, okay, on day 1, I'm going to be doing this 1x4 to RPE of 5. But I also have squats later in the week. I also have heavy deadlifts later in the week. So maybe I don't want to push this day as hard, right? Now, the reason why this is important, right, and I'll say this before I get into the rest of it. The reason why this is important is because RPE is genuinely one of the most subjective things in the world, right? So you guys might have heard something called like a flex 8, right? So anybody on Team Flex does like flex 8s, which is essentially like a max out, right? So RPE is genuinely like a very subjective thing where it's like something could be programmed at an RPE of 5 and you could hit a RPE of 6 or 7 and still have it be easy, still have it be comfortable, but not have it be exactly what you're looking for, right? So the importance of context is to frame RPE, meaning that, yes, this is a RPE of 5 for both lifters, so technically they should hit the same weight. But lifter B having the context of, okay, this stuff here, this pause deadlift, this pause squat, is really just to set me up for later in the week on this actual deadlift, actual squat, would now know that, okay, cool, I'm not gonna push this anywhere near as hard. Meaning that I'm either gonna go for a true RP 5 or less. So lifter A might go, okay, I could probably do, like 100 kg for that RP of 5, right? And then lifter B would be like, okay, cool, I could probably push 100 kg for that RP of 5, but I might be better off going 95 kg just because this day is not too important. I want to really work on technique. I want to have good pauses, and I want to just set myself up for that main squat day later in the week, which I could then go ahead and push, right? So this is why context is important, and this is why if you self-coach or if you have a coach, you want to understand things on a more macro level. So let's now take this up another step, right? So the difference between lifter C and lifter B, as you guys can see here, is that they have the exact same week 1. However, lifter C understands the entire month or the entire 4-week block, as opposed to just simply understanding that 1 week, right? So the same way in which lifter A and lifter B differed, where lifter B was able to say, okay, I'll probably go down just a little bit on this day 1 here. even though I could go 5 kg heavier and do that same RPE, just to set myself up for later in the week. Lifter C could now look at the entire block and understand, okay, cool, on this day 4 here, I don't necessarily even need to go crazy on week 1 because I know I'm working up to a RPE 9 on that bench. I know I'm working up to a RPE 8.5 on that double. So it's like I know what I'm doing, and I also know the time frame in which I have to do it. So this is tying in again to the whole AGWA method. AGWA stands for analyze and understand. The G stands for goal set. The W stands for work backwards, and the A stands for assess and adjust, right? So this is why it's critical to understand things on a macro level, because you're able to plan things out, right? So let's say with lifter B now, if they only knew, okay, this is what I'm going to be doing for week 1, right? How would they know, okay, this is maybe it might be a 5-week block, maybe it might be a 4-week block, maybe it might be a 6-week block. I don't know how to plan things. I don't know how to structure things on week 1, right? And that's the same way how I think about training, where it's like, if I don't know what I'm going to be doing, or not necessarily what I'm going to be doing, because I want to be clear here, right? The last A in AGWA stands for assess and adjust, right? Assess and adjust. The reason why that is critical is because there is no way for you to know exactly what you're going to be doing, even in the next phase, or the next 2 phases, or next 3 phases. However, unless you have a direction in which to point your training, then you will never know exactly where you want to go, you know? So it's like assessing and adjusting is important, because let's say, for example, okay, you know, this didn't necessarily work this phase, or maybe you have some sort of like competition pop up or something like that, you don't know, right? You could always change the plan, but the reason why the plan is important is because it gives you context for your current training. So that is why the analyze and understand is so critical, right? Now, similarly, as you guys could imagine here, looking at lifter C, lifter D has even more context, because they know, okay, cool. They could see here that, all right, on my squats, I'm working up to RPE 8.5, but then in phase 2, I still have doubles working up to RPE 8.5. So now lifter D has the context of, okay, maybe, although again, it is RPE 8.5 or whatever, like, if you guys don't know by now, like if you don't understand by now, like I think RPE is a useful tool in terms of measurement, but not a useful tool in terms of prescription. RPE, in terms of prescribing what something should be, is almost useless, because because things change in such, you know, like a erratic way sometimes, where it's like, okay, if I prescribe your RPE 9, more than likely when you hit that set, it's going to be at 8.5, it's going to be at 9.5. Getting it directly on RPE 9, yes, it is possible. Yes, it happens. All these different things like that. But at the end of the day, it's more so about what you do and the progress that you are making. You know, so that's my thoughts on RPE. But either way, right? The way how you want to be planning out these blocks is with end goals in mind. And having more context gives you better end goals. So for example here, let's say your best double was, I don't know, 550 pounds, right? That was your best double. Depending on how your training is going, right? And this is going to tie into the different types of phases, which is the rebounding, building, and progressing. Depending on how your training is going, because lifter D knows that, okay, in block 2, I will now be having doubles. I will also be having doubles up to RP 8.5. They could choose to sandbag this entire phase and still set themselves up for next phase to hit a bigger PR. So they could choose to go here with 540, which is 10 pounds below their best double. And then because they sandbag that, they could then set themselves up for a nice 565 here for a 15-pound PR. Whereas if it is they did, let's say they tried to push for like 555 here, right? Just like a 5-pound PR. That could have possibly gassed them out if they didn't have the context of the next phase, so that they wouldn't have been able to hit that 565 the next phase, and maybe, you know, they would have just been fatigued, you know? So The context is important, understanding the type of phase is important, all of it is important to tie in. And this is also what I want to summarize this, right? Because I don't want it to be too like long-winded or anything like that, right? What you want to do is understand your training on a macro level and use that context to guide what you are doing currently. That is how you avoid bad days. The reason why I never have bad days, the reason why a lot of other high-level lifters never have bad days is just simply because they are disciplined and they understand the plan that they are working towards on a long-term basis. So they don't think about this particular phase or this particular week or even this particular block. They think about, okay, what am I going to be doing, 2-3 blocks from now, and how is that going to, what am I going to do now to set myself up for that? That's it. Simply put, think long-term in your training. Just like in life, delayed gratification and thinking long-term is always the key. So if it is you coach yourself, again, you don't necessarily need to write out 3-4 blocks in advance. You could just simply have an idea of how you want to progress the main stuff. And if it is you have a coach and you don't necessarily need to have him write out 3-4 blocks in advance, but just simply have a chat with him and try to understand, okay, what is the vision here for this macro cycle, for this longer chain of blocks, as opposed to just like, all right, nice, how are we going to do this? And then on top of that, always leave room to assess and adjust so that way the plan could change, but you have a direction for your training which would impact what you do now. So yeah, hopefully that was simple, straightforward enough. I didn't want to be too long-winded on it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.